here. The last 2.5 to 3 years have been probably the bleakest, worst years in my business career. So yeah, I'm coming to the office at 7 and leaving at 7, but it's not because you're having fun, it's because you're trying to survive and keep the lights on. I've been through a lot of different cycles. I'm probably older than most of the people in this room, but this has been like a religious experience. I mean, this has happened so fast. But I think I'm here to tell you that there's something about going into this year that I feel a little better, as a lot of other people that I've talked to feel much different than 2008, 2009, and 2010. Last year, there was sort of a sense of false euphoria that we've reached the bottom and things were going to start to turn around, and obviously there was a lag. So, you know, my philosophy, and I tell everybody this, is just work hard, keep plugging away, also have a good sense of humor. And as a matter of fact, in the same Times article, in the same Times, there's an article about, you know, the guy that bilked $6 billion out of Credit Suisse, and he was just convicted. It was in France. And he was convicted 3 years, and also has to pay back the $6 billion. And based on his salary of 100,000 euros, they said it's going to take 180,000 years. That's actually in this paper. I mean, it's actually with a straight face. So what I'm going to talk about briefly is, you know, what I think is going to happen this year. What's wrong? Can't hear?
Yeah, there you go. That's better.
Well, what is this? Okay, you can't hear in the back. Can you hear now? Okay, all right. Yeah, set that so it doesn't hit me in the face. Is that better? That's what you're going to have to start to see. You're also, I think you're going to start to see and have to see more interfacing with, you know, with the private sector, and with some of you, you know, you may kind of shrug. That means you have to work with people like us that are developers. Who, I think one time when there was a poll on the world's worst humans, I think it was incurable lepers, developers, incurable lepers. When something happens like this, it's like, well, you know, it'll bounce back or what, and people are kind of waiting to see what happens. And when people realize that that wasn't going to be the case, and there's always a lag, well, what are we going to do to change our business plan? And we were, like many other, lower. Everybody thought that would bounce back. It hasn't bounced back. And the question is, what's going to happen this year? One of the things that we've done is we formed a new entity to do basically program management at risk. He's really a good bond lawyer, but the alternative that we have basically is private capital, an entity that we are working with that manages over 90 life insurance companies. Basically would come in and we'd either do a lease-back arrangement or sale-leaseback arrangement, where we'd either build something from the ground up, do a leaseback with a city, or a sale-leaseback where we would buy. The issue, depending on whether it's a library, community center, sports park, is can the municipality, you know, can they make the payments? We can do the bond financing that we have, or the alternative to bond financing we have is not quite as good as tax exempt, but it's close. I think the BAB has disappeared now for the Build America bonds, which if you blend that in, it would really be great, but that's been shot down. But it's a source of capital, and it's an alternative, whether it's a library, whether it's a sports park, community center, and that's what we're doing. And this is a completely separate entity from our organization, and it's all fee-based, where we'd go in, we'd be involved in, we're involved in 2 or 3 RFQs right now to do the project management and construction management from the ground up. So that's a major change. So not only can we provide the project and construction management, but we can also provide a alternative to bond financing, which we think is going to be really important. People that we're working with are very excited about it, and we are too. Real quick, we are also, from our standpoint, as we look at, where we're going as a company and other things that we're going to do, and eventually development will come back, because especially urban infill, I mean, you're definitely going to see that. One of the things we've done is we've entered into 2 collaborative agreements. One is with an entity called Tanger Outlet Centers. I don't know how many you're familiar with the outlet business, which is a very, very, very small community. And part of what we're going to be doing is they're in Greensboro, North Carolina. They only own one out here, which is Barstow, and we're going to try to help them come out, roll their opportunity out, and find locations for them. The other thing that we've done is we've just entered into an arrangement with an entity called Big League Dreams on a national basis, where we're going to be collaborating with them. We're really excited about this. We're going to be taking over all of their marketing and all of their project and construction management. These guys have just exploded in a short period of time. We think opportunity on a mini portfolio. So things are starting to percolate, and I think you're going to see more of that. The last thing I want to touch on, because I think this is going to be not only the new normal for developers from an equity standpoint, but for municipalities. How many of you know what the EB-5 program is? That's amazing, because I'd say 3 years ago, there wouldn't be any hands. For those of you that don't know, you can go into the government website, or there's a law firm, the Fragaman Law Firm, which is probably the best immigration lawyers in the world. And basically, it's a government-sponsored program where for every $1 million invested for someone outside the U.S., as long as it creates 10 jobs, then the individual gets a temporary visa, a 2-year visa, and then eventually gets a green card. What happens is you become what is called a regional center, which is a receptacle for this capital. Once you're approved, then you can go out and you can bring dollars in. And we're talking about a different type of equity. It's not expensive. The number one goal is for someone to get their green card. And what you're now starting to see is municipalities starting to do this. It's something you really ought to look at. You also ought to find an article, and if you see me afterwards, I'll tell you where you can get it, written by an attorney in Philadelphia by the name of Joe Klasko. I got this business online, actually from Old Republic Title, about developers seeking capital under the EB-5 program, but the same thing can be done through municipalities. I talked to a city manager in September that rather than go to ICSE, he was in Beijing and Shanghai. And these increments come in either $500,000 or $1 million. It can be $500,000 if you're in what is called a TEA, which is a targeted economic area, where the unemployment is 150% over the national average. That means the investor can be $500,000. He was sitting in a room with 135 prospective investors at $500,000 to $1 million pop, and where else are they going to find money to do that? It's something you really ought to look at. More and more municipalities are going to get involved. What you've got to do once you become a regional center, though, is obviously you've got to have a project, and I think many of you do. And then secondly, you've got to figure out how to access capital. Tonight at 11 o'clock, while you're all going to be asleep, I'm going to be on the phone with one person in Hong Kong, one person in Shanghai on Skype. I have Skype now, and we'll be doing a conference call tonight at 11 o'clock talking about how we're going to access capital. So that's what's exciting about a situation like this. Going forward, figure out what you need to do, and don't lose faith. Thanks.
You got my list. That would help. Steve, that EB-5 program is a dynamic program, but I do want to say this so that not to mislead. Victorville did get it, and the feds have recently, I think, taken it back, or they're looking at some issues. They did the $500,000 deal for the wastewater plant. Yeah. Yeah.
But there are a lot of issues with respect to this. The main thing, though, is
I think the moral of the story is that we all have to think a lot more out of the box than we had to. Steve, thanks for your very candid comments. Our next presenter has recently rejoined a good friend of hers, Mary Jane Alazzo. Mary Jane was here in the city of Ontario as the Economic Development Director, and when Greg Devereaux took over at the county, he brought Mary Jane, and Mary Jane quickly brought a very long-time friend of hers and somebody that's just done a great job in a short period of time. That's Kelly Renders. Kelly, why don't you come up and tell us what's going on in the county?
Thank you. As many of you know, I've worked for Ontario and with John Andrews here on the panel for a number of years, and I'm brand new at the county, 2 months, so I've just sort of dived right in. I don't have a copy of my slides, so I'm going to be looking up. But I just kind of wanted to remind you how large the county is. We have 2.1 million. The government incentives didn't necessarily help us that much. Industrial space is doing quite well. We have a lot of demand for some of the larger spaces. So we're seeing a nice uptick in that market. And in office space, obviously there has been very little activity, but what activity has taken place is a lot of companies are trading up from Class C, Class B spaces into Class A spaces. So people are, who are in good shape, are doing this, improving their corporate image, and taking advantage of lease rates that, are probably the lowest they're going to get. Retail, obviously, we're still feeling the effects of the unemployment rate and housing crisis. So that's where we're at. Our focus at the county really is here at this point. We're going to, focus on trying to create jobs. There is manufacturing in California. In fact, California has more manufacturing than Texas and New York combined. So there is manufacturing in California. On some level, those people have decided they need to be here. So what better place in California, despite all of the difficult government regulations, what better place is there than San Bernardino County? You have the access to the workforce, you have the infrastructure is available. So we're looking to try to identify who these people are and bring those jobs to the county, because the county obviously needs jobs. We're going to still continue to support logistics. Obviously, those operations are our bread and butter and are very successful here. We're trying to leverage existing assets to attract employers and investment. Some of you may have recently read about Molly Corp. Many of you may know about them, many of you may not. They are opening a mine out in Mountain Pass, way out in the desert. But it's a mine for rare earths, and rare earths are only found in Australia, China, and out in our desert. And these are the components that they use to make magnets in all of the electronic devices that we're using right now in this room. So we have some unique many advantages to being in the enterprise zone. Hiring, there's tax credits. I have to look at my notes on the enterprise zone. There's business expense deduction, net operating loss carryover. There's all live here, you operate businesses here, you have investments here. We want to know where you want to see this county going. This project is basically trying to bring residents, businesses, school districts, investors, any kind of stakeholders together to figure out where they see the county going. What is their vision for the county? What kind of place should the county be? A great place to be, to encourage investment, to live, and to do business. So that's it. Does anybody have any questions or move on? Okay,
Any questions at the end?
okay, thanks.
Thanks, Kelly. And I will say this, I did take the survey, took about 5 minutes. We went to one of Steve Pontel's visioning sessions, and I don't know, and maybe Rob and Greg can talk about it from Riverside County's standpoint. I know that, isn't your county working with San Bernardino County on a joint survey through the Workforce Investment Board? Yeah, I think it's a great way to poll people. We're going to do that in the high desert, but the one that they're doing with the county, I think, is what we need to see, and then we need to hear what the results are. So thanks very much. Our next speaker is kind of a divided group. We have Rob Moran and Greg Lee with the County of Riverside. And who's going to go first? Is it Rob? You going to go together? Okay, great. You guys come up and talk about all the dynamics down in your county. Got some great things going on.
Thanks very much. I'm going to try to take this thing out. There's about a 2-foot difference between my head and Greg's. And I live in Riverside County and work in Riverside County, and I did take that survey, Kelly, and where it said the idea is it said move your business to Riverside County. So appreciate the opportunity. Greg and I are going to tag team this afternoon on a case study, sort of an anatomy of a deal that we just recently completed. You can go to the first slide. Just real quick comment on public-private partnerships. Obviously, that's nothing new to this region. We certainly need to do more of that, given the Inland Empire and out of state. And our fear was that they would take one of those offers out of state and we would lose 250 employees. And this was definitely not the time we wanted that to happen. We did a site search for them, found them a variety of different locations in the region. We were hoping to encourage them to purchase a facility instead of leasing. And it's always better to have an owner than a renter. And so we found them a facility in Hunter Park, in the Hunter Park area of the city of Riverside. And as you can see, there was several public and private partners that helped make this deal come together. You go to the next slide. The county RDA is located in the city of, it's an overlay in the city of Riverside, and that allowed us to put together a loan package for them that is a 10-year loan for $2 million, 4% interest, and there's a forgivability provision in it should they meet certain employment thresholds. It's a very unique situation. It's fully underwritten, as it would be any private loan. There's collateral, the building itself and the owner's personal residence, and the deal couldn't have happened if it weren't for the city of Riverside's public utility. I'm going to let Greg talk about some of the things they did as well.
So I tried to help you out today. I'm number 10 on the list of city presenters, and so I thought I can get out of my presentation by teaming up with the county, but Suzanne said, no, you're going to have to make your presentation. The county and the city really have a unique relationship in that, well, number one, half of our department came from the county of Riverside, and number two, they have a redevelopment area within our city which allows us to sort of tag team on projects. So the county came to us and said they had identified a building in our city. And so when AMA came to us, they said, look, we have a really tight timeline here. Production slows during Christmas, and so we need to make sure that by the time we close escrow, we have to be done by January, February. So we sat down and we streamlined their tenant improvements and their permitting process, which cut that in half. And a lot of times when we're talking to developers and we're talking to brokers about some of our services, what we like to call in-kind services, and I'll talk about this further in my presentation. Sometimes the streamlined permitting process is not taken as seriously, but it costs everybody money in terms of time. And so we provided them liaison services. So there were a couple of times when there was an issue with something in the building, the plan check didn't go. Here is 40% reduction in their utility fees, and a second year is 20% reduction.
Part of that function, and I think redevelopment is the essence of public-private partnerships. That goes away, and government is really reduced to either being extremely creative, which we're going to have to be anyway, or just fundamental basic services like police and fire. Some people feel that's the way it should be.
All right. I'm going to adjust this thing. I usually like a cordless one. I like to move around. So I'm with the Coachella Valley Economic Partnership. So you kind of like, what is that? Let's go, let me get out of the way here. Let's go to the slide. Here's the discussion agenda, what I'm going to talk about. Let's jump right into it. I promised Bob that I'd be 15, 20 minutes. I think the bar is going to be open after this, so we're all focused on it's not until 5. Oh, then I got 90 minutes. And I'll be talking until 5, until the bar is open. Okay. Mostly I want to talk about the opportunity in the Coachella Valley. Certainly San Bernardino, County Riverside, all of Southern California, high desert, low desert, has opportunity, and I want to focus specifically on the Coachella Valley. What is CVEP, Coachella Valley Economic Partnership? We are a nonprofit, 501c3. We're a public-private partnership. Half of our money comes from private investors, banks and hospitals and law firms and private investors, and the other half comes from our going on. But essentially we're Palm Springs. 2-hour drive time is about 24 million people, 4-hour drive time is about 36 million people. So we're kind of centrally located, just like everybody in this region is. You know, you do 2 hour from here, and you're going to reach a lot more people than we are. But if we do 4 hours, we can hit Phoenix, and that's some good news, and I'll talk about that and why that impacts us in a few minutes. Okay, there's the Coachella Valley. That's sort of the map. I represent 9 cities. Now, all 9 cities have city councils, city managers, city economic development, city redevelopment, and all that. And we work together fairly closely as a region. And when I talk about the region, I think it's important because we're as a single city, Palm Springs, Indian Wells, Rancho Mirage, Coachella, you know, it's not a big market. But as a region, we're it booms, and you actually have to wait at a stoplight for maybe a cycle. You have to make a reservation for dinner. It's crazy. I don't know what's going on out there. Okay. Now, put it in perspective, population by city, I know it's small. Indio has the largest population out there. So if you're going to go, what's the biggest city population-wise up in the Coachella Valley? It's Indio, and then we have the breakdown. Now, this comparison, 417,000 in our region, again, 9 cities, sort of breaks it up. And what this really says, if you could read the really small print, is that that's what we do. We do recreation, we do golf and hospitality and retail and those support services really well. But what we don't do is a lot of manufacturing, and we don't have a lot of high tech, and we don't have all those things that a community wants to have to sustain, make it a year-round economy, and make it a sustainable economy. That's what we're working on. Let me talk about this now. So what we did a couple of years ago is we created this thing called the Blueprint. About 2008, we all got together, including the county. We had a steering committee. There were 45, 50 people on the steering committee. We said, how are we going to address this? 2008, you know what was going on. We tried to get out ahead of it. We spent about a year putting together this blueprint. Okay. And then finally, the implementation plan. And this was a 5-year strategy, very small. All the cities in the county Riverside come together. That's a powerful voice. That's what we're talking about. Next one is quality of place. Some good stuff. Polo season just opened up, and I don't know if you ever watch polo, but it's actually not one of those sports that is snooty anymore. You can go out there and you can tailgate and wear your jeans and a sweatshirt and bring a box of wine and some nachos and have a good time at it. That's polo in the Coachella Valley. It's actually a good time. Okay. So we hired this group to come in and do this this blueprint for us, and they had a bunch of quotable stuff, but I pulled this one out, and it basically says that the Coachella Valley is better positioned than almost anywhere else in the country because of our quality of place. Now certainly we have challenges with everything else, but we have a great quality place. We have more Fortune 500 CEOs that have second, third, or fifth homes in the Coachella Valley than anywhere else in the U.S. or anywhere else in the world for that matter. First one in 45 years in the U.S. or some craziness like that. Well, we're going to have 3 teaching hospitals out in the Coachella Valley, and we're going to have programs in the Coachella Valley that associate with that medical school. Exciting stuff. We also have, okay, what are the jobs? Well, Desert Regional Medical Center, one of our things, if you go to their website, you'll see about 57 or so active job openings, and they're not just doctors and nurses. They're just about everything. They're x-ray techs and lab techs and caterers and go down the list. I a wind turbine technician to get a job out there. There's a lot of construction jobs, welders and pipe fitters and electricians and concrete folks and all that sort of stuff. And what do those pay? Those pay about $78,000 a year. So good paying jobs again. Okay? I'm going to get back to the clean technology in just a few minutes. Logistics, supply chain, this is a tough one. I mean, we're competing with San Bernardino and Riverside and other areas. But basically, everything that comes out of those ports of Long Beach and LA come through the Coachella Valley. Either it's on rail or on by truck. They drive right down the I-10, and we see them, and we say, wow, you know, there's got to be some way for us to make money other than our 2 truck stops to make money off of this. And so we're going to focus on it. I don't know what the answer is, but we're going to look at it. We have some cities that want to develop some sort of a intermodal train. They reconfigured one of their auto manufacturing plants into a big studio. I think Michigan dropped $1 billion into that, and they graduate, and then we have another program. We said, well, we got to have another program to get them to college, and we have a scholarship program. So we partner with 17 matching partners. We contribute $1 million. We have $500,000 in matching from our different folks, and so we do about $1.5 million in scholarships every year. So every May we announce, and then, you know, a lot of people say, well, why would I go to Coachella Valley? There's so much opportunity. I can go to Tucson, I can go to Phoenix, I can go to Victorville, I can go to Barstow, I can go anywhere. Why would you go to Coachella Valley? Well, we're creating what we call a climate for success. That's our tagline. You'll see it on all our stuff. And that's significant. People don't want to move. People see the opportunity there. Now, a lot of folks, like we heard earlier, are moving up from Class C and Class B to Class A. There's a lot of that going on because the rates are cheaper. So we have a lot of movement in that area, and that's good news. The problem is that leaves those Class C sites sort of empty because those lease rates just aren't competitive. So how do we fix that? Well, you have to get the building owner to sort of do an upgrade. And that's something, you know, that the private sector needs to work on. But that's what's happening in the Coachella Valley, just like anywhere, I'm sure. And the second thing is, and those needs, I think everyone here provides those services, site selection, and business plan development, and all those sorts of things, but we want to make it really easy for them. We want to help them with permitting and processing and all that. So is it different than anything else that anyone else is doing? No, we're just a home. Now, this is interesting. This is bank deposits. I know you can't see it, but in the Inland Empire, the top 3 of the top 4 bank deposits are in the Coachella Valley: Indian Wells, Palm Desert, Rancho Mirage. There's a lot of money in the Coachella Valley. A lot of folks out there have a lot of money. I don't know where it is, I don't know what they're doing with it, but there's a lot of money, and that's all I have to say about that. If you guys want to go find it, go knock on some doors out there. Okay. Retail sales per capita. That top bar up there is Ontario, because, you know, they just kick everybody out. But the next one down is Palm Desert. So we do a lot of retail sales in Palm Desert and in the Coachella Valley. All right, we have a Palm Springs International Airport. I mentioned about 750,000 passengers annually. But the unique thing there is we have about a quarter or a third of those are business travelers. It's actually people coming there for board meetings, for business, for whatever. So we have about you know, 250,000 people coming in every year for business. And so our challenge is, how do we get in front of them to tell them our message? How do we tell them that it's a great place to live? Oh, and by the way, we have great rental rates, and we have access to different markets and all these sorts of things we want to talk about. So we're working on that. Okay. We have an enterprise zone like everywhere else. Hopefully they're around in the next few weeks, but we do have one. Of them is agricultural loans, but we actually have the ability for them to fund all sorts of different things because of our designation out there. A lot of ag land, a lot of sort of census tracts that qualify for different things. So USDA can do some interesting things out there, along with the SBA and some other folks. We have a thing called the Coachella Valley Women's Business Center that does all sorts of neat business help. You need to, it's not just for women, you need help with a business plan or social networking or those sorts of things. They're a big help. Now all this talks to the small business, and the small business needs space, whether it's retail space or whether it's light industrial. It doesn't matter what it is. All these folks are looking for a place to do their business. A lot of home business certainly, but they're looking for places. So our commercial market is active, probably not as active as some other areas, but it's going to get better over the next few months. City economic development groups are very active. I work with all 9 of them, and they're just great folks to work with, doing good things, and they can provide city incentives. And what I would say is, if you have a client, if you're a commercial real estate person, or you're a business person, first stop should be the economic development department, either a regional one like myself, the county, or the city, and not the building department. Don't go to the permit department, don't go through building and housing or whatever. go to the city economic development folks first. And I think that's probably a better bet, and say, hey, I need to open up shop and I'm going to create jobs, and they can help you make the transition through what you're doing. Most of you probably know that, but you'd be surprised. We have some clients out in the Coachella Valley that don't know that, and they could save time and money if they talk to the right folks, okay? We developed a thing called Team Coachella Valley. It's basically all 9 cities come together. We work with Team California, we work with Team Riverside. Again, it's just another sort of unity thing around the regionalism aspect of it. Okay, opportunity clean tech. In the Coachella Valleys, I stand there in Palm Springs. We have nowhere else. Now you can get wind in Minnesota, you can get solar down in Florida, you can get wind up into Hatchby, but you can't get all 4. You can't get all of this. So we're unique, and we'd like to sell that. Okay. So here's some opportunities, obviously, with what's going on out there. The Secretary of Labor, or Secretary of Interior was out there a few months ago and said, we have the opportunity to be the epicenter for renewable energy in the world. And that's what we're working towards. And with that, a regional issue of the Focus magazine that the Riverside County puts out that has information about the county and all 9 cities.
If he doesn't do this, he's going to take more money away from the schools and other entities. But you know, that's all the problem down to the local level. That's all the state always does.
How that plays out. It sounds like he's throwing it out there, but you realize what powers he really has.
It doesn't have as huge effect for us because we don't have, we already get our 20-year period to approve that, and we have never met our plan. We can't go over that anyway. So we have a lot of agreements in place now. They should be protected. They are now, they're not. So you should be able to still do debt service, you still be able to do all your obligations that you have. But going forward, there's a lot of places that have much bigger project areas like Montana, Riverside, the city of Riverside has, the county, the city of Riverside has probably, it had maybe 75 positions in the organization are funded by redevelopment. Same thing with huge economic development.
There were no RDA positions, whatever that would work.
Good job.
Nice meeting you.
view. Drive out to Palm Springs, walk in the view there. There's a beautiful view down the valley. Now I look at this wall going like this. Voice of progress, that's how it goes.
It was never really a good view. I don't know. A little bit of a view down there.
Right before you get that early. Yeah, what's the word on lunch? Life here. Charging ahead.
He's got all his financing in place.
He's got a lot of letters of intent and a few commitments, but I think the first phase is happening. I know, but I think, we've talked about people, but I think he's